Okay, welcome back. We are here with more novel boot camp, halfway through to the finale of the course, which was intended to be a 12-week period, which will take you all the way from idea to that finished draft. Or I guess in this case, since we already did the outlining portion separately, this will just be taking you from outline to finished draft rather than from idea. Today we're looking at suspense on the page and different types of tension that you can use in your story to bring the reader from moment to moment. So we'll start with check-ins, where we will ask, what is your progress? Are you hitting your word count goals? And if not, is there something getting in the way that you want to ask about or get some help with? We'll look at micro tension, which is mostly drawn from Fire and Fiction by Donald Mass. This is a topic requested by Nacho for a long time now. I've done my best with it. It's a newer idea to me, but I think that looking at some examples today will set the record straight. We're also getting into suspense and thrillers. So thriller style plotting, how to connect a chain of clues together, what different mysteries look like and how they work, driving questions, setup and payoff, misdirection, and we'll wrap up with questions and workshop/lab. Okay, let's jump right in. So hopefully everyone's hitting their word count goals. We are at the halfway mark of this reset course. I mean, I think we're at this point probably to the point that we reset from before. So ideally, you are making that progress and you are at least halfway, if not more, through your book. We will ask today, how is that progress? And also, what did you read this week? What have you been reading lately? All right, let's go down our list. We'll start with Dakota.
All right. Hey y'all. So progress is great. I'm a little bit behind, but that is okay. But I'm still making progress and progress is progress, and I'm okay with that. I'm very happy with where I'm at the moment. Um, and yeah, I'm feeling pretty confident in this at the moment. So everything is going according to plan. I'm pretty much where I thought I would be by this point. Anyway, so yeah, that's okay. I'm a little bit behind in the word count, but I always figured that I would be. So at least I had the expectation that I was going to be behind. So that's fine. There is no like uh I have no grand expectation to I probably overshot my word count. Let's be real. Like the word like I don't think this is going to be 100,000 words. That is a lot. I may be overshooting that a little bit. But regardless, I'm in a good spot, I think. Um, but anyway, but yeah, in terms of things I'm reading, I am actually going to start reading The Turn Glass. It is by I forget the author's name. I featured him a couple times in Mystery Group. I forget his name, but it's a more recent book. And it's an interesting one because it's a mystery where you have to like you read it one way and then you literally have to turn the book upside down to finish it. Yeah, that's it. Gareth Rubin. Yeah, that's him. Yeah, it's cool. I love the opening of this. It's very Holmesian in a lot of ways. Yeah, it's very cool. It's a period drama about a murder. Like it's
Like
really
a
cool.
mystery, perhaps?
Oh yeah, yeah, it is. Yep, yeah, yeah. It's a
Most
murder mystery.
murder mystery. Got it. Okay. Sounds
Yeah.
cool. Yeah,
Hmm.
I like the idea of the you turn the book upside down to read more of it, so it kind of resembles it's like the hourglass
Yep.
flipping it
Exactly.
over. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, it's cool. It's a cool book. Not many books are printed like that anymore.
Yeah, the name for
I,
that is non-ergodic literature, I believe. Ergodic refers to the idea that you read it in the standard direction of your language. So from left to right for English, top to bottom, left to right. But literature that is written non-ergodically means that you have to basically either rotate the text or hold it up to a mirror or do weird stuff with it. Lots of examples here.
yep.
All right, thank you for that.
Again.
Glad you're making progress. Let's hear from Joyce.
Hey, I've made progress, but not in like a word count sense. So I had to do a lot of deleting on my first three chapters because I'm in a writing group and I had some significant police procedural mistakes. But I got all those cleaned up. There might be like a couple of pieces that got, I still need to kind of check. I'm on chapter 7, just check the other chapters to make sure I didn't make any references to things I deleted. So I had some pretty significant deletes, but I also did some nice rewrites. And so my count feels like it's the same, but I did do a lot of work. Um, so so I'm kind of pleased with that, but I think I'm back on the track of just doing straight writing. And then the book I'm still reading The Future Human. It's by I think Lee Harris. He does channeling. So I'm actually still on that book, but I'm probably maybe a little over half done with that.
Okay, thank you for that. Yeah, sometimes you do a fair amount of work, but your word count does not actually go up for some various reasons. So no big issue there. As long as you feel like you're not stuck on something, you're still able to make that progress and add to that word count coming up, then all is okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joyce. Let's hear from Lou.
Oops. Hi everyone. Let's see. So I guess in terms of this week, well, Nacho and Connor sent me their video on how to do outlining. So that's what I was kind of starting to work on. It's like, you start with the sketchbook and then you go to the scene cards or whatever. So yeah, I thought that seemed really cool, so I'm going to try that out myself. And yeah, and then so I was also in the sci-fi and fan fiction writers groups. And so Nerthus there's helping me with the outline, and we're hoping to like finalize the outline and then hopefully discuss it in one of the sessions. So that's kind of what I'm working on right now.
Great.
Word
right.
count wise,
Thank you for that.
still in editing hell. So
Okay, all good. Thank you for that. Yep, if you're just getting started on outlining and structure, then we have so much material on that. Probably like 100 hours you could watch on it. But also we cover it in every
goody.
bootcamp.
Okay.
Yeah, there's lots of
Oh,
videos.
very cool.
Mhm.
Oh, fun. Okay.
Thank you for that. Let's hear from Luke.
Hello, I am working on many projects, just alternating back and forth, getting sort of just a few pages per day. I have revised, oh, I think 8 chapters of my Weird West novel so far. I'm a lot more happy with them now, but I am coming up to this chapter that I hate that I want to totally rewrite, and that's a big sticking point. Um, it's this big sort of like you can have everything you want, but you have to turn it down kind of moment for the protagonist, or you choose to turn it down because revenge is more important. Um, I don't know, just something I'm gonna have to figure out. And I am reading, I read a bunch of screenplays, and I'm reading this rereading rather this 1970s pulp sci-fi novel called Brother to Demons, Brother to Gods that I'd like to adapt into a screenplay at some point. So I'm just going through and taking notes, and uh, I mean it's pretty short. It's like 148 pages, I think. No, it's a little bit longer than that. It's 170 something, but uh, it's a very short novel. I think it'd be pretty easy to adapt, though I do want to sort of maybe change the protagonist slightly from there's like two main characters, and I think I want to focus more on the lesser, the deuteragonist, rather make her the protagonist. I think would be a better movie. Anyway, that's me for the week.
Great. All right. Yeah, it's much more likely that you'll be able to adapt some obscure, lesser known story. So if you ever find one that you like, it's sort of off the beaten path, it's from some used bookstore or something like that, then a lot of times those authors would be happy to get something adapted and might give it to you for free. Thank you for that. Let's hear from Megan.
Hey, I decided to take a course with one of Becky's mentors. Um, and so the senior editor at Chicken House. This is going to be one of her last courses before she retires. And so in taking the course, I thought, well, I can potentially age because it's mainly for everything from picture book all the way up through YA, but they do YA crossover. And I thought if I age Jazz down, the book that I'm currently working on actually works quite well at sort of YA crossover, new adult age with a 20-year-old protagonist. And in doing that, it created a ripple effect through the book that I've been going through now and fixing. But in following the ripple effect that it creates, I'm actually getting some better scenes out of it, and I'm getting a larger character arc. And it also means at some point I need to incapacitate the ant, because I made the ant a mentor figure, and the character originally was qualified and didn't have a mentor figure other than for magic. And so I had to remove the mentor figure for the physicality of the MacGyver sequence. So I'm now working my way back through the book, rewriting it according to the character being 20. So, and also I've been working on trying to fix the pacing a little bit because it's a bit slow at the beginning. My books tend to be. So I'm in there with a machete, I slashed 3 whole scenes yesterday, which was sort of a sequence of scenes that I decided could be skipped. And so I'm sort of in there with a machete as I work, cutting out things I don't need and then bringing out things that are more important with a little more detail. So that's what I've been doing all week. I started on chapter 1 and I'm now on chapter 8 in terms of the renovation. I actually have 1,000 more words in the book than I had previously, even though I slashed a bunch of scenes. But I'm happy with the progress, and I'm just going to follow that ripple effect through the book until I get to where I was. And then I'll pick back up with where I was, which was the beginning or the sort of the boss fight. So halfway through the 3rd act is where I was, or sort of a third of the way through the 3rd act.
Okay, sounds like some big changes.
I have
Go ahead.
a whole plot line, so I'm closing plot line 1, and anyway, I'm babbling, so that's enough.
Okay,
Oh,
yeah.
and I've been listening to Fourth Wing, but I keep falling asleep, and I don't think that's as much of the fault of the book as the fact that I'm exhausted.
I see. Okay, all right. Thank you for the updates. Yeah, adding a character or changing the character's age or gender or something like that might seem like it would just be a small addition, but usually it will ripple out and have many, many more scenes that need to change as a result. So glad you're getting that work done. Let's hear from Nacho.
Yeah, so I took a break from the novel to work on this short story for an open call for this anthology, and I learned some important lessons. I learned like probably not a good idea when you're working like 70 hours a week in your day job and hosting events on the weekends to like stay up all night every day trying to write a short story for like 2 weeks without sleeping. It's pretty tough. And I think the particular story, I feel like it was, I grew as, in some ways, like in terms of just going through the process. But this feels like something that the kind of story that probably needs a little bit more time to like edit, carefully, like rather than just, finish this rush to finish a first draft and just submit it this thing. So I'm going to take a little more time with it and maybe like, submit it to some other, there are all kinds of other, whatever, journals and stuff where you can submit short stories. So
Sure.
I think it's a cool story. Yeah. And I think it could also be, maybe a screenplay or something. But yeah. So it just um uh I guess I would say it when you're writing a novel and you think about how many words you're writing as you're writing the novel, 5,000 words is not, 4 or 5,000 words is not a lot, right? Because it's like maybe a chapter, or like you're thinking in terms of like this story that you're working on. But when that is the whole story, it's not like just, knocking out a bunch of words for a chapter of a novel that you're already, you know what I'm saying? It's a lot more, um, it's as much work as, plotting and writing a screenplay, basically.
Right. Yep. A lot could go
Um,
into just those 5,000 words for
yeah,
sure. Did you find it helpful
yeah,
to have
yeah.
plotted it or outlined it like you did?
Yeah, because I could already see like where I was going over as I was like completing, different sections of it and stuff. So it was, yeah, a lot of fun and helpful. And I think if you're, maybe I have to write a few more short stories or whatever to be able to weigh in on that. But like, I think if you're really trying to meet a certain like word count target, like you can't go over this, then I think that's very helpful to do that, to like break down like the words for each section.
Yeah, totally agree. That's how I outline my own stuff before.
And that's how you do your novels as well, right?
Yeah,
So you
for
have
sure.
kind of words, you estimate the words for each chapter and everything too, right?
Yep.
And yeah, cool.
Usually to the thousand. Usually not.
Not like 50 words here.
Yeah, usually not like the 50, like or anything less than 1,000. I'll just combine that into one scene if it's less than 1,000 most of the time.
Hmm.
But glad it sounds like you finished the story at least though. So
No, I
that's,
didn't
oh,
finish
you
it.
didn't even finish it.
No,
Okay, so you're gonna
no,
take
no.
a little longer to wrap it
Yeah,
up. Okay,
keep working.
all
Yeah.
good. But yeah, no
Hmm.
need to enter any one contest. There will always be more. Thank you for that update. Sage, go ahead.
Yep. So, like I said a while ago, I actually finished my story back in late September. I have done a lot of editing on it. I don't think I'll ever be fully satisfied. That's just who I am. But I think it's in a state where I sent it off to a beta reader, and so just waiting to hear back from that. Um, what? Oh, I read a sci-fi book called The Metamorphosis of Prime Intellect. The reason I sought it out is because one of my concerns is my length. I am at 52,000 words, which I think is pretty short. So I found a sci-fi novel which is kind of similar in tone and premise and is also about 50,000 words. And I read it just to see, does that feel right? And if anything, I thought it was a little long. I thought they could have cut a few scenes. So that made me feel better.
Okay, great. Yeah, it's usually in modern publishing, 70,000 is kind of like the baseline for an adult novel, but that is not always the case, and there's plenty of classics that are shorter, both in literary and commercial. So yeah, lots of exceptions. Glad you finished your drafts. And you said it was a beta reader. Does that mean you've had readers before that? Usually it goes alpha first, then beta is the after you do another revision. So are you saying?
I might have meant alpha reader, yeah.
Okay, alpha got it. Very first reader then. Cool. All right. Well, that's good news. So yeah, let me know how that goes, and we'll keep working on that draft. And your other project, if you want to start revising that one next, that will be several months of work at the very least, I would guess.
Yeah, that'll be a much longer term project. I think I'll actually focus on this one for the time being.
Okay, all good. Thank you for that. Let's hear from. Do we have one more? Yep, one more from Vicky. Are you there, Vicky?
Don't have much.
Sorry, I heard you for a second there.
Just one thing to finish.
You have one thing to finish, is all I heard. Maybe you're having a mic issue. Okay, all good. Let us know in the text chat if you're able to type in there. Internet issue. Okay, I understand. No problem. Okay, so today's topic is going to be suspense and tension. Books are, like any other type of story, movies, TV shows, plays, or anything else, driven by tension and conflict, even on the very sort of, I don't want to do this tell us about a plot twist thing right now. I'm just gonna leave it blank. We're going to first just get into suspense, conflict, tension, and just go into the kind of like differentiation between these ideas. Okay, so to begin with, unless like, okay, here's where I'll start on this. Most of the time when a story feels boring, it is a result of not enough happening. Like the reader will say, I don't feel like anything's happening here. And that is usually marked by progress towards something. So your characters are making progress in the scene towards their goals. And by accomplishing some goals, it allows them to find clues that might lead them to answering questions and things like this. There's lots of types of progress, and in the mystery genre, the main type of progress is gaining information. So the idea of mystery, though, is not only relegated to the mystery genre, and we use these ideas like, mystery, suspense, and tension, like we're talking about, in every genre, no matter what you're writing. This comes up in various ways, because unless you have enough sort of engagement in terms of your POV characters and the external action of the story, then it's going to feel kind of just informational. Like I'm just telling you about something rather than making you feel like you're living through these events alongside the characters. So we are using suspense, conflict, and tension to make the story more interesting and exciting, both on the plot level and also on the sentence by sentence level, to create these kind of miniature questions and answers that will bring the reader through the book. So let's start with microtension, which is, again, mostly drawing from this Donald Mass book, Fire and Fiction. So he describes the idea of microtension this way. So it's not really a function of plot. You can have tension in a scene no matter what is going on. It doesn't have to be that important. It can be totally banal action that your characters are taking. It doesn't really rely on high stakes or the circumstances of the scene. Action does not inherently generate microtension on its own. Dialogue does not produce it automatically either. Exposition can be an area where you make great use of it, but it does not automatically create tension. So this idea of microtension refers to the moment-by-moment suspense that keeps readers in this constant state of suspense or wanting to know what's going to happen next in the next couple seconds of the story or the next line of the story. So he recommends that you dig deeper into character to find certain contradictions or dilemmas or opposing impulses or clashing ideas that might keep us in suspense. For instance, maybe your character knows something that we don't, and they sort of imply that something bad is going to happen. Like you can even throw in a couple lines that might suggest, your character's just talking about setting up a birthday party, but then they mention at some point, and that was the cake that later that day would be smashed when it fell from the window. And that was the streamers that later that day would be pulled in a rage from the doorway. Something like this, right? You can have your character actually just foreshadow certain things that have yet to pass. That's one way to create this kind of tension. But on the even smaller level, you can find these sort of contradictory feelings within your character, right? You can imply that there is something wrong or something kind of off in the scene based on the way the character's acting or the emotions that they're feeling that don't seem to be germane to the situation. Maybe it doesn't seem like it all adds up. It can start as small and simmering subtext. Even the choice of words or the turn of phrase can create this kind of tension. Changes in emotion are also a great place to look for that. So characters struggling with opposite emotions or things that would seem to contradict each other. When things sort of feel off or puzzling in a story, that is creating this specific type of tension. Here's an example from the opening of one of the opening couple chapters of Gone Girl by Gillian Flynn. The sun and this is a first-person narrator, by the way. So let's think about, what does this tell us about the person that is narrating here? The sun climbed over the skyline of oaks, revealing its full summer angry god self. Its reflection flared across the river toward our house, a long blaring finger aimed at me through our frail bedroom curtains, accusing, you have been seen, you will be seen. So what does that sort of say about the character that he would describe a sunrise like that?
The person feels sort of guilty about something, or that they feel like they, someone saw them do whatever it was that they did.
Yeah, Grace. You have been seen accusingly staring at me. Like, you can describe a sunset in a million different ways. The fact that this POV has chosen to describe it as like a police officer staring in through your window, ready to punish you for your crimes, it tells us that he is in a very specific kind of mental state. Maybe as you would continue to read the chapter, you'd be wondering, why is he doing that? What
I,
is he so guilty about? Go ahead.
I think just in the first sentence, what's intriguing about it is just, it's just everything's normal. Sun climbed over the skyline of the oaks, revealing its full summer angry god self. So just angry god, like what the hell is an angry god, right? Like that's what sort of makes you want to read to the next sentence. And I guess it's sort of like intriguing, like why is it so angry, right?
Yeah, I mean, most people like describing the sun as an angry god is like a primitive way of looking at it, right? Like describing it as this sort of monster that lurks above us that is waiting to pass its judgment upon you is sort of like the connotation of what he's saying there. Somebody else want to weigh in on this? Thought I saw a few other mics on mute.
Oh, I was just gonna say paranoid.
Oh, sure, paranoid. Yep. Maybe worried that he is exposed somehow or he's feeling vulnerable. I think I saw Megan. Go ahead.
Feeling small.
Go ahead. Feeling small, sure. Megan, were you speaking?
Oh no, Luke and I literally had the same answer, and we also both unmiked at the same time. So that's just
Okay.
silly.
All good. Dakota in the chat puts it's accusatory, like the sun is a judge. Yeah, exactly. So there doesn't need to be anything going on in the scene at all. Like the characters don't need to be pursuing a goal in order for something to be interesting, intriguing, and exciting and keep you reading. Novels are kind of different than movies and scripts like that. You're not always in a scene in a book. You are in between scenes. You're kind of like drifting between moments, or you're connecting the dots between moments. We're finding the next scene or navigating to the next scene. But on the way there, you can continue to utilize this idea of suspense and dramatic tension. Let's look at a little more on suspense. So the words mystery and suspense and confusion, I think, itself are often conflated together. So confusion is universally a bad thing, a bad reaction when it comes to storytelling. Even though some audience members might not quite know this or might not quite be using it in the same kind of way. They might say like, I was confused at first, but then I learned the answer and I love the movie, which is in fact how it's supposed to work. That's not really confusion in the way that we use it. The difference is that confusion is an unintended emotion where the reader does not know what the writer means, what they're supposed to picture, or why whatever is happening in the book is happening. And a confused mind can only give you so much leeway before they're just going to tune out and stop reading and feel like they're no longer in good hands. So avoiding confusion at all costs is one of our primary objectives. And one of the ways that we do that is by utilizing suspense and mystery. Mystery is another version of not knowing. It's different than confusion, though, because mystery is it creates curiosity rather than confusion. So if you adequately create a mystery in a story, it should feel like there is an answer, like somebody knows the answer, and if the reader keeps reading, then they will learn. They will be rewarded for that work of reading the story by eventually finding out what that answer is. So when that's all handled effectively, then we say you are leveraging or utilizing mystery effectively. It's an intellectual process, though. Suspense is mostly this emotional process where on a scene-by-scene level, suspense is when you're sitting at the edge of your seat and you're starting to sweat and you're worried and nervous for the characters and you don't even realize that 5 pages have turned because you're so engaged on an almost physical level with the story. Like you feel totally immersed, and you are invested enough in the characters and their journey to be worried that they will fail and to be hoping that they will succeed, because true suspense and tension come at the intersection of hope and dread. You really, really want one thing to happen, and you, the reader, the audience, really does not want another thing to happen. Unless both of those are true, you're not going to get to the best type of suspense. Okay, so we can only truly get the suspense we want by giving the audience information, but not all of the information right away. we like to create certain questions and then trickle feed information throughout the rest of the story, wherein each clue that we find is going to act as a springboard to the next clue. So it's going to come with a new sense of propulsion and direction when we get a clue. But also occasionally there will be setbacks, misdirections, red herrings, and other like things that take our hero off course, that they should not feel so frustrating to the reader that they throw the book away. We want, even as your characters are backsliding or hitting walls, like I call it a brick wall scene, when the character just learns nothing, makes no progress, and nothing is accomplished. We've just hit a brick wall, right? I often say that if your character keeps hitting brick walls, then either the walls need to start cracking or the character does. So that means if your character hits 3 dead ends in a row, maybe each time they hit another dead end, we see them get a little bit more upset. We see them emotionally change and start to crack and start to go crazy and start to get upset and angry. And they, after the second, lead they track down turns out to be a bust, they go to the bar and get smashed, and they show up at work the next day hungover. And the third time, well, they go on a drunken bender driving their car across town, whatever it is, right? So we can be seeing danger, damage, or consequences piling up on the character, even if they're failing to learn new things in their case. So remember that the walls need to start cracking, or the character does, but we shouldn't be stopping progress at almost any part of the story. Like, we're always making some kind of progress. It's just the kind of progress might change from scene to scene or from act to act. Hope that makes sense. So Hitchcock says there's no terror in the bang, only in the anticipation of that bang. So if your story is something like about, I don't know, a monster in a house, your character comes into the house, and what if the line was something like, Jeff walked into the house and he was worried there was a monster, and he spent a very scary night there at the house, and eventually the monster jumped out and got him. Those, if you lived through that, that might be scary and suspenseful. But why is it not scary or suspenseful to hear it summarized like that?
There's no build up.
Yeah, no buildup. Doesn't really feel like we're there if it just goes by in a flash, because the way you experience it would not be over instantaneously. I think we're trying to kind of mimic or we're creating a facsimile of the character living through that situation, and by extension, the audience living through that situation. So we have to sort of feel like we are there. That's why a lot of horror stories, although we might we might feature a cold open that promises there's going to be a monster later, we need to take a little while to sort of get immersed into the setting and feel like we are there. We need to kind of understand who the character is and what they're trying to accomplish and where they're coming from, and who they are, and what is their situation like, what is their normal like, before we can violate the normal. So take some time. You need to allow the plot to unspool and unfold over a longer period in order to truly get suspense and tension. You have to ask a question and then not answer it for a while, and maybe just give little pieces of the answer or glimpses of the answer, but never actually reveal until the opportune moment. Okay, you have to be conscious of what the audience knows and feels and what they think is going to happen. These things at every point. So our brains are hardwired to guess what will happen next. Survival instinct from millions of years of evolution. So obviously this is all working in our advantage as humans. There's a reason that we tell stories in general, and it's very linked to these ideas of survival, right? Like, this is a tactic that we use to pass cautionary tales and things like this through the generations and through cultures and societies. We are very good at guessing what will happen next, and your audience, you can assume, has seen a bunch of or read a bunch of stories like yours. So we might know that something's going to happen, but we don't know when or how. You can use that to your advantage, especially if we know the kind of story that we're in. You might have the audience might have certain expectations that you can play upon. Every time you have a scary movie and the characters opening the fridge or the medicine cabinet, and sometimes the movie will start to play the creepy music, and then they shut the medicine cabinet and there's nothing there. Why did that create tension?
Because you expect there to be something there. You're waiting for the jump scare. You're waiting for the monster or I don't know, something.
Yeah, and it creates, I think, it's almost involuntary, that reaction that we're having. Even if you know that even if you've seen the movie before, it can still create that feeling of anticipation. And trying to use that in your stories is trying to bottle that feeling of anticipation. And of course, you can also, by throwing a couple fake outs in your reader's way, then you will build the expectation of, oh, I can't actually predict this. Your reader will truly not know what is going to happen next. And that's a valuable and rare feeling, that you legitimately don't know what's going to happen next. I mean, a lot of the time your reader they couldn't actually guess what's going to happen next, but then they see it and they're like, well, I could have guessed that, which is both a good and a bad thing. It's going to lead to stories that the audience says are predictable, even if at the beginning they could not have told you what would happen. And usually that is a function of, well, it played out like a lot of other stories that I have read before. So you have to be really aware of your genre and what the reader is looking for and what they have seen a million times and what they are tired of, in order to be able to use those moments, use those fridge door, medicine cabinet moments, whatever those look like for your genre. Every genre has its own version of that thing, of the subverting the trope in order to misdirect the reader and make them feel unsettled, unsafe, like we don't know what's going to happen next. Can somebody think of another trope kind of like that, either in a book or a movie that you've seen subverted, or you can think of a way that you might subvert at the last second?
In Agatha Christie's Murder on the Orient Express, even though it is very classic now, back when it was written, it was assumed that, oh, you know who the killer is. And then the twist is, oh, wait, it's the evidence points to something completely different. So the subversion is the evidence you think is going to point to one person, but it actually points to, spoiler alert, everybody.
Yeah, we can spoil it. Let's just spoil it. It's fine. So,
It's been 100, it's been 50, 60 years at this point. If you haven't read it or seen it, you've had that time.
yeah, I think so. It's fair. So the way that that mystery develops, every clue seems to contradict the other clues. There's a murder on a train, and it seems like the killer stabbed with his left hand, given the angle of the stabbing. But then we find another clue that could only point to somebody that's clearly right-handed. And then we find another clue that says the killer had to be this tall. Oh, it was a tall guy. But then we find another clue that says, wait, but this injury could only have been caused by a very short person. So every clue seems to say, no, it couldn't be the thing you thought before. It doesn't really seem to follow the rules of the traditional parlor mystery, in which there is, in fact, one killer. So the movie Scream is like a really similar thing, where it's like, oh, it's as simple as there's more than one killer, which allows you to work with that assumption that that you never said there was only one. The audience only assumed there was one, given the rules of the genre, or the implicit rules. But in fact, it turns out at the end, and yes, a lot of the passengers collaborated. They all took turns stabbing the guy. I don't know if they did that to deliberately throw off the detective, or if they just all, maybe it was just I think they all had a grudge against him, or they had some,
All had a
obviously,
grudge.
yeah, some really good reason why they wanted to do it. But the effect was, it seemed to throw off the detective until, by the finale concludes, every one of the suspects did it. Cool, right? Is it fresh and new now? No. Agatha Christie alone kind of explored pretty much every permutation you can possibly think of who did it, who has done it in this case. Is it one of the suspects? Is it none of the suspects? Is it all of the suspects? Is it the detective? Is it a side character? Is it the POV, the narrator? We kind of went through she wrote so many books that she kind of went through everything. And even at the time, mystery writers were all trying to one up each other and kind of come up with a new clever twist. So you can imagine it's all been done. Some version of it has been done before. You're probably not going to come out with anything entirely original, but your goal is not to write something that has nothing like it has ever been written before. The goal is to create engaging questions and create an engaging track of progress towards those questions, that we can consistently be seeing your character gaining clues, and alongside the character, we will be gaining that information too. A big part of not just mystery genre, but utilizing the idea of mystery in stories at all, is the idea that your hero will be gaining clues at the same rate as the audience, that we're on the same page as them. So that means that they typically shouldn't be learning clues off screen, unless you have a different POV that is more important for some reason, right? The Sherlock Holmes thing does violate this, and Dakota is here, and you were just talking about you were big on this topic because this is your group as well that you run. So I'm sure you've read many of these books where Holmes goes off and does his own thing for quite a while, and then comes back and has solved the case, and then sort of gives his conclusion, and then we sort of need to play catch up with him. I think if we were in Holmes's POV, the books would be very, very different. How would they be different?
Oh, yeah. I mean, we would be 2, 3 steps ahead all the time. We would know more than uh but we would know a lot more information. First of all, because the books are written in Watson's POV most of the time, we would know a lot more information. They would be more uh like clinical in terms of voice, but because they would be more clinical, we would have a lot of uh interesting, like, not only factoids, but things that tell us about the psychosis of the killer. So we would get a lot more like of his method of deduction would be more clearer. Whereas in Watson, because we're with Watson, in actuality, it's kind of like, how did you figure it out, Holmes? Well, I mean, but if it's for Holmes, it'll be like, well, it's this is how it is because of this and this and this.
Yeah, there'd be a lot less suspense, I think.
Yeah, 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 because we know everything.
It only really worked because Watson is the POV. It would be a completely different series if Holmes were. Go ahead, Megan.
Also, there's the small matter of Watson actually being a likable, sympathetic character and Holmes being a giant sociopathic dick.
Yes. That makes certainly we could look at that as a way to get the reader more invested in the story by if you have a really unpleasant character, it happens to be the brilliant detective, well, maybe find a more likable POV.
Right. Well, you have the likable character, but also it makes him more likable because the likable character likes and sympathizes with him. You find yourself liking and sympathizing with him, even though he really is a dick.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. So hopefully that makes sense. The difference between mystery, suspense, and tension, and how all these things are being balanced in your story. Remember, we only get that suspense and tension when we don't know things. So if your character figures things out right away, we're not going to build as much suspense. Luke, did you have some examples or something you wanted to bring up and share? Go ahead.
I've got two from movies, and I've got one that's not as good from a book if you want to just focus on book. But if I can do movies, I got two really good ones.
Go ahead.
Okay, Final Destination. This is about building suspense. Okay, we know the rules. Someone is going to die, and we know who it is. We enter the scene. We see, okay, there's a blender, there's a coffee maker, there's like someone plugging in an electrical outlet, and there's water on the floor. There's I don't know, people building a construction scaffolding with like heavy cement bags like way up high that are about to topple over. There's all these things that could kill this person in the scene, and we're just on the edge of our seat waiting for like what the hell is actually going to kill this guy or this gal or whoever it is.
Mhm.
That's suspenseful. Like we know what's going to happen, we just don't know how.
The
And
whole franchise is based on this idea. Like, if that sounds interesting and entertaining to you, you'll love the franchise. If that sounds horrible to you, you will hate it because that is the trick that
yeah,
they do in
that's
every movie.
every
That's
time.
every scene. Yeah, that's every single scene is like that. Or not every single scene, but every death sequence is kind of like that. We know it's coming and it's inevitable. Every character dies. We know it's going to happen, but they get so much suspense and fun out of teasing the audience with setups.
The other one is from Hellraiser 2022. It's a little bit of a spoiler, but in this movie, when you play with the puzzle box, it stabs you, and then you're marked for death. Like the Cenobites are going to come and kill you, and we see them come out of walls and kill people. So there's this one scene where they grab this girl who's been stabbed by the puzzle box, and they throw her in the back of a van, and they just start driving. We're like, oh, they might actually get away. I mean, she's marked. Like we're kind of tense. Like, what is going to happen? Like, can they get her? They have to come out of walls, and while they're driving, they get lost in the woods. Like the road is going on too long. Like something supernatural is happening, and they can't quite figure out what. But then we see the POV of the girl in the van, and the van just stretches out into this long sort of concrete tunnel, and like it is it is great. It is very I don't know, it's one of the best moments of that whole movie. just taking a rule we've already established and sort of like recontextualizing it in an interesting way that we didn't expect.
Absolutely. Yeah, a lot of supernatural stories have to sort of do that in order to mine a lot of surprise out of their premises. A lot of Stephen King books, for instance, would be like they'll have some sort of rule, and then the characters like try to avoid it all, like try to avoid some terrible fate all throughout the book. And then in the ending, that rule is applied in some different way that sort of pulls the rug out from under them and ends up screwing them over in some karmic, cosmic kind of way. It's really common in the what would we call it? Like campy 1950s style horror, like Creepshow, Tales from the Crypt, Drag Me to Hell, that sort of stuff. Drag Me to Hell does a good example of this too.
Oh yeah, that's a great example.
Thank you for those examples. And also, I will say there are Final Destination novels. They're not just novelizations. There are original novels in the franchise. Most horror franchises actually have original novels that expand the lore. Are they good? Well, no comment. Okay, ticking clock. Ticking clock is a device that we use in every type of story. And this is just, well, your characters have a limited time to do what they need to do before something happens. Maybe that is a bad thing that will prevent them from doing the thing they need to do. Or it could even, it could be almost anything, but it's like a time limit. It is going to be inherently propulsive because the longer your story goes on and the more the time ticks down, the closer we get to the event happening. Sometimes there are effects of that clock approaching. You know, the alien fleet is coming to invade Earth, but we're going to start to see their scouting parties or their initial waves of attackers or something like that. Ticking clock could be an all or nothing kind of thing, like the classic ticking clock of mom and dad are coming home, we need to clean up the house from the big party. That's an easy ticking clock to wrap your head around because if the house is clean by the time they're back, then we succeed. If it's not, then we fail. And that one doesn't really feature any omens or signs of them getting closer necessarily. But in a book or a movie, you can always cut back and forth between mom and dad coming back and the characters cleaning. And then we cut mom and dad are closer now. And we go back to your characters cleaning. Desperately, we sort of amping up the tension by showing the progression of the ticking clock, even if the characters are not there to see it. But it only works in certain POVs. One of the most obvious advantages to using the ticking clock is this buildup of sustained pressure from beginning to end. So if your whole book hinges on one big ticking clock, like a lot of thrillers, for instance, will, they're about trying to defuse a bomb before it goes off, or we have to find the missing girls before the kidnapper kills them, or whatever it is, right? It is an inherently propulsive dramatic tool. Thriller style plotting, and thrillers, of course, themselves, are inherently relentless, and any kind of book can use thriller style plotting. What is thriller style plotting? What does this actually refer to? What does that look like on the page? Anyone?
Could you be more specific?
Okay, so this is referring to things like pacing, information. How are thrillers going to be using pacing?
Usually they sort of ramp up the tension. They sort of keep you propulsed from one scene to the next. There's lots of I don't know, revelations and false victories, and I wouldn't say necessarily fast paced, but I think you get what I'm trying to say.
Definitely. And I would say they generally are fast paced. They don't have to be, but thriller style plotting tends to be. And that's usually what we're referring to. If we say this was a fantasy book, but with thriller plotting, then that means every chapter ends with a cliffhanger. And the other really big thing is short chapters. Why do short chapters create propulsive pacing?
Because you'd want to read just one more, and then just
Yeah.
one more, and then just one more.
The bite-sized nuggies of story. That's how you create a storyline that feels kind of addictive. There are also some downsides to thriller style plotting. What are the downsides or trade-offs?
not a lot of time to breathe,
Okay. Yeah,
not a lot of time to just focus on quiet moments between characters and that kind of thing.
Yeah, not as much time for characterization, atmosphere. Thriller style plotting is all about plot focus. It is not character focused at all, and it is potentially kind of exhausting. Does somebody else want to weigh in on the downsides or disadvantages of this kind of pacing?
If you use too many cliffhangers, it can become tedious. Like there's a cliffhanger chapter, and then the next chapter, hey, guess what? There's another cliffhanger chapter, and then there's another one, and there's another one, there's another one, and it's just there is too much of a good thing when it comes to thrillers, and cliffhangers is one of them.
Definitely. And you can read even some successful books like Dan Brown books are basically like that. They basically are every single short chapter, which are just a couple pages at the most, ends with some kind of cliffhanger. But the reason that people typically do not refer to Dan Brown as a masterful writer, I mean, he's a very popular writer. We have to admit that. But the reason that we might say that this is not some of the strongest writing out there is that a lot of these cliffhangers are kind of empty, or they would seem to be a big revelation, but it turns out right on the other side of the next chapter, it wasn't actually that big a deal. Maybe you guys have seen some examples of that sometimes too, where it was like, then he opened the door and what he saw next would like change his life forever. Go to the next page and it's like, it was his friend Jeff who had a mission for him. It's like, well, but so that didn't change his life forever. It did it. It was the beginning of a very long chain of events, which eventually would change his life. Or you do the even the worst example where it's like, your character, they find a box on their front porch and it's ticking like a clock. What's going to happen? Then they open it. Oh, it turns out it wasn't really ticking. It wasn't a bomb. It was the ticking was something else. Like we even go back a second to say no, they got out of trouble and it was all good. There wasn't really a problem. We just thought there was a problem for a second. That's kind of the ineffective version of this. So make sure that if you are actually trying to leave us on a cliffhanger, that it feels impactful and effective. And most of the time, most books aren't able to sustain something incredibly impactful every few pages, right? So don't really try to. I wouldn't try to write every single chapter and sentence, and like don't overdo it with the tension. If you write a storyline with propulsive conflict and with a great ticking clock and just a well-arranged situation, then it should have plenty of tension and conflict. Don't try to pour too much marzipan on it. But here are what Dan Brown describes as, I know, I just kind of did talk down on his writing in terms of his use of cliffhangers to some extent. But he's also one of the most successful modern thriller writers that is alive in the world. And I think there's a great deal to learn from it. For instance, this is sort of his 3 C's of the foundations of thriller type books. The first thing is going to be the contract, which is the implied promise that we make to the reader about what will be delivered by the end of the story. That's usually going to come from a great cold open. A cold open that will set the expectation of, oh, here's the bad guy that this book is about stopping. Here's the monster that we're eventually going to find. So a good cold open is actually quite important here because it sets a lot of promises in place. And also a good cold open can be from any point of view. A prologue might be the label you put on it, but it does not need to be. The clock is going to be the ticking clock that we talked about. So time pressure that is going to create higher stakes and interest as the story goes on. So making sure that the journey is getting more difficult as the time is ticking down, either consequences of some kind or omens of the bad event coming to pass are going to begin to make your characters' lives difficult. Did I hear somebody, or was that my own mic echoing?
I don't know.
Oh, okay. Did you have a question?
No, kind of unrelated to this. What reminded me of this was someone talking about Final Destination. I saw a video talking about Final Destination, and the person pointed out that at their best, these movies are masterclasses in editing for anxiety. And she pointed out that the root word of anxiety comes from, I think, Greek, meaning constriction, meaning like it forces you to look at certain things or forces you to think about certain things. In Final Destination's case, it's, all of the horrible ways in a scene that a character could die, so that's just an interesting way to think about it, I thought, where it's like a good anxiety inducing scene forces you to look at something or think about something.
Great. Thank you for sharing that. Another way you can sort of leverage that idea is just it doesn't have to be every single scene, but at least like the major scenes of your story in your outline phase, I would ask, what impossible choice does my character have to make here? Or what impossible task must they overcome? Obviously, they're not really going to be impossible, but it should sort of feel impossible. And even at the plotting stage, it should feel like, okay, I understand that feels like something that my character would really struggle to do. That would require a great amount of effort to overcome. That would result in high drama. Okay, so dramatic questions. So the mystery genre is all about answering questions, meaning it's all about information. We are withholding that information until towards the end, and as soon as your character solves the driving question, you wrap up the book as soon as possible because the story is basically over. The central A story all relates to a driving question. All along the way, though, we are finding other smaller questions and answering them, which will lead us to clues. The chain of clues are the pieces of evidence, testimony, or information in one form or another that your characters are getting that are leading them to the answer of the driving question. Usually, your main character also should have a really clear vested interest in the driving question. It shouldn't just be something they're curious about. It should be something they're kind of obsessed with, or it's really important that they answer this. So make sure that your driving question isn't like, is it going to rain tonight? Because I just want to know. It's like, we need to put significant work and effort into solving it. So our protagonist's goal is essentially to resolve the driving question. Movies usually only have one. Books and shows might have a few more, especially if they are a long series. Maybe there's one question per book, or maybe there is a question that would take several books to even answer. The paradigm is usually, though, within the world of serialized mystery writing that you answer the driving question per book. The readers might start to kind of get very frustrated when you violate the genre convention of answering the question. So make sure that you answer it in some way. Or if you really truly say there is no answer to this question, you have to find something else more satisfying because you're breaking one of the key promises of mystery. And so you find something else. You say the question was not relevant, or the character changes their goal, and so now they aren't interested in the question anymore, or the question was based on false assumptions and really there couldn't be an answer because we found out something else was going on. It's tough to make that satisfying. So make sure that if you deliberately choose to not answer the driving question of your story, then somebody learns it, if not the protagonist. And if nobody at all learns it and the audience just is left in the dark, then you've done that for some very specific effect. You've done that to create an intentional sense of dissatisfaction or non-resolution. And that's kind of like the point of that book for the most part. The only stories I can really think of are like off the top of my head, I guess, maybe just the only one I can think of that really nails this is 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, which is not a novel. That's a movie by Mike McDonough from 2017 or 16. And this is a story that is all about, it's kind of like it's set up like a whodunit. It even suggests at certain points that the killer could be someone within this community, or maybe it's one of these different people that we've met along the way. And I'm gonna sort of spoil this movie. Sorry, everybody. It's not a mystery, really. It just uses elements of mystery. We don't learn the answer to the question. We don't learn who the killer was. In fact, the one guy that we thought it probably was, we definitively find out through DNA testing it wasn't him. So by the end of the movie, we're sort of out of leads. Like the main character who is desperately trying to figure out who murdered my child, by the end of the movie is left back to square one. What kind of feeling does that leave you with?
Well, it's super depressing. I love this movie, and it's just like, oh, it's like, really? Where is the sense of justice? But that's the question, right? Where is the sense of justice?
Yeah, absolutely. So the character has had to go a long time not knowing the answer, and she's going to go longer. She's going to continue to not know. And I think the movie is about kind of how we cope with that, how we cope with not knowing, and the ways that we sort of like what we do with that emotion of not knowing, and what we do with all that frustration and all that anger, and the ways that you'll see the ways that throughout the story the characters either embrace that anger or turn away from that anger. And the ending moments, I think, are all about sort of releasing that anger and letting that go and saying, I accept that I will never know. And that is kind of like the core theme of the dramatic, sort of core of the story, which is is our main character ever going to be ever going to be able to accept and find peace with not knowing who the killer is? So it really becomes the main point of that story, that it's not who we thought it was, and we will never know. But it's about something else. We come out of that story with something sort of better than figuring out which of these suspects it was. We come up with a theme that you could only have gotten by not knowing. So I would think about it that way. Like, if you don't answer the question, make sure you've got something way better lined up. Dakota says he recommends watching. I do too. He's my favorite writer, Martin McDonagh, and so it's one of my favorite movies. But I did just spoil a part of it, so I apologize for that. It's still got lots of surprises along the way. I promise. It's worth seeing. Okay. Driving questions. Any questions on questions? Any questions on this idea of driving questions, central questions?
I mean, so you mentioned Twin Peaks, and that's an easy one. Who killed Laura Palmer? But what if it's being driven by some kind of like existential mystery, like Devs? You know, does free will exist? You know, like, are there more examples of?
To me, in Devs, that's like the thematic question, isn't it? Or, well, I guess it is a plot question as
Yeah.
well. But doesn't it start because the main character's boyfriend or fiance commits suicide in a suspicious way? Or what is her relation to that? I can't exactly remember. It's been a while since I saw it, but there's a suspicious death where a guy sets himself on fire in the pilot. So I think we've got the driving question of why did he do that as well?
Why did he do that? Could he have done otherwise?
Yeah. So
I just saw it recently, so I can talk about it a little bit. Yeah, so we the audience know that he didn't in fact kill himself from the very beginning. It's more about her figuring out what's going on.
Right. So yeah, you can have several layers of question or mystery. You can have like the thing that gets your character invested in the story, and then the additional question that they kind of raise once they start pulling back the layers. And then on top of that, you can have a thematic or dramatic question as well, which could be something like, can you accept loss, or can the character accept this grief? Or that might be the sort of deeper, emotional, more abstract question of the story. But usually if you are using that, then you have something more concrete and immediate as well. A lot of Lovecraft stories are kind of like that, where the main character will be like a census taker, or like a water line inspector for some small town. And he was brought into the story with like, wow, it's weird that this town hasn't been getting any water for like 100 years. I'm looking at the books now. They seemingly have not had their pipes set up. That's sort of strange. I need to go resolve that question. And then in investigating that question, they stumble on a bigger question, which is, oh, why are there fish people in this town, or whatever it is?
Or mole people.
Mole people, fish people, dog people, like name it, squid people.
Yeah.
Zombie people. There's even rat people, aren't there? Any other thoughts, comments, questions on driving questions? Questions on questions. Thank you, Dakota. That should be the name of my podcast.
Are there any notable mysteries that are driven by some absolutely unimportant, like minor, petty kind of question?
Did you watch The Chair Company on HBO, or is it The Chair Factory or The Chair Company?
Nah.
Chair Company.
Did watch American Vandal, but that at least has stakes. Like, people are involved. I don't know.
So the new Tim Robinson show on HBO is this. It's oh, do I want to spoil it? It's only it just came out, so maybe I don't.
What's it called? I'll
The
add it
Chair
to
Company. Yeah.
The Chair Company.
I won't spoil it, but I will say it on its surface is about the character trying to solve an incredibly boring and banal mystery that might not matter at all. Like it just doesn't. It is maybe even based on false assumptions. But as he continues to dig, he finds a more interesting question, I guess I will say.
Okay.
I won't spoil more than that, but it does start with the character just doing something so, like, trying to solve a question that's so dumb that you're basically like, that can't be what this is about.
I guess there's a Community episode all about Who Stole Annie's Pen, I think.
Yeah,
Something
that's
like
a
that.
episode. And they acknowledge that it's not important in that, but at the same time, I think the the justification for it is that, well, the trust in our group has been broken. It's not so much about the pen as much as it is about somebody here is lying to the rest of us and not telling us. And how could we be friends with somebody that would lie to us like that? So I think that they do kind of admit that it's weird that they're doing this, but at the same time, they're like, it is a small thing that it stands in for something larger. So there's various ways to play with that idea, usually in comedies. Like usually the examples we've mentioned are in comedic stories, but I could see maybe in a more serious storyline that it could potentially hinge around something dumb or unimportant. But I think that we would just have to land on something more important by the end. Usually, probably more important by like the midpoint, if not sooner. Like premise scenes would probably be where the true importance of this comes out.
All right.
Thank you for that question. Anyone else? All right. So different types of mystery. We'll start with just the basic boilerplate fair play whodunit. So we know what the detective knows, and if we're smart enough, we can solve the case before, just perhaps before he does. But we can see this has been subverted so much that, like even Sherlock Holmes is not exactly a fair play whodunit. Simply because we have a different POV that has access to different information. So we are not with the detective gathering all the clues, and usually by the end, it's more about kind of being in awe of, wow, he's so smart for having put that together. And we enjoy that. We like enjoy watching him work more so than we would really be able to solve it because we just don't have every piece. So you're not required to play entirely fair. But a lot of the time when you are following a sort of detective as your central POV, we want to know everything they know, and it will feel like cheating if they have access to some clue that we do not have access to. So careful with that. The clueless mystery is kind of one where we just deliberately don't give the audience anywhere near enough information to figure it out. Or it could be that the characters themselves are just not really putting it together. They're not doing a good job, or they're just kind of dumb. I think an interesting recent example would be kind of the movie Weapons, which just came out recently. It's kind of a clueless mystery in that the characters are trying to resolve it, but none of them is doing that good of a job. And so only the audience has all the pieces. None of the characters until the very end. I think even at the very end, there's no character that knows every part of what happened and why. Maybe Alex, the kid, but and maybe I guess the villain. But yeah, I won't spoil any further. The reverse whodunit is where the reader knows who, what, when, where, and why, and maybe even in more detail than the detective does. But we have some other kind of driving question. So it could be something like The Outsider by Stephen King, where it's like, well, we have video evidence of this guy doing the crime. He killed somebody on video. But then it turns out, well, he says he's innocent. He's our POV character, and we trust and believe him. He's like, it really wasn't me. It couldn't have been me. I have an alibi. And it turns out his alibi checks out. So now it's like, well, we have all the pieces, but something doesn't fit here. Or it could be that we have most of the pieces, but we're trying to just fill in one of those. Like it could be we know exactly what someone did, and we know exactly what the consequences were, but it's more about unspooling the motivations. Like the show Adolescence on Netflix is this, right? It's not really a traditional fair play whodunit. We know exactly, and we also know the criminal is guilty as of episode 1. It's on video, and it's not some supernatural twist like The Outsider, where it's like, well, it couldn't have been me. In the first episode, the character doesn't really admit it, but we see video of him doing the crime. It's more a mystery of like, why did he do it? What are the various factors in his life that led him up to that point? And the several different characters, including the police, his therapist, and his dad, are trying to like all assess that question, but none of them, again, have all the pieces. So yeah, Adolescence it has a mystery element to it, but we wouldn't really say it's a fair play whodunit, or it doesn't really utilize that type of mystery. It's more of a why did they do it? Why not? Yeah, exactly. So, fair play is a certain unspoken, unwritten contract that we won't sort of cheat, and it can lead to a really unsatisfying feeling when the reader feels that the author has pulled something out of nowhere and they have introduced a clue that was not clear up until now, or they have reached some conclusion that it just feels like there's no possible way we could have gotten there. if you violate this, if you're writing in the more traditional mystery space, it's a very quick way to make sure that they will not read your next book. And usually, if you're doing mysteries in a longer series with a sort of iconic detective character, the assumption will be that you are playing fair in every one. So you don't always have to, but we will think that you are. So you have to have a good reason to not be. Some deception is not cheating. We are signing up to be fooled and to be tricked. When can we violate rules or assertions in the story? And we could also ask the question, when might the audience actually be impressed by a level of deception on the writer's part instead of annoyed by it? When is it okay to trick or lie to your reader? Anybody want to weigh in on that?
Unreliable narrator.
Unreliable narrator. Okay, can you explain further?
Yeah, usual suspects. Spoilers. The whole movie is concocted from this guy Verbal Kent, who is secretly our villain that the interrogator is looking for. While this guy's being interrogated, he's looking behind him at these little, I don't know, things on a corkboard and just inventing like fantastic stories based on these little things on the corkboard. And then the detective realizes it like after he lets him go, basically. Um, so we've been tricked, we've been duped, but we were just like the detective in the story. I don't know. It's a satisfying kind of way to be lied to in a movie, in a story.
Most people do like that movie. I'm in the minority that actually finds it unsatisfying, but I can see why people like it, I guess, and it's just such a big trick. Like it all is just based on that trick. But I just want to, and so it is effective in a popular, well-written movie. But I will just say why it doesn't click with me is because it leaves the entire, like, I think this is maybe even why people like it, is they're like, well, we don't know what happened. Everything's in question now. It was basically all a dream. Like, we don't really know if anything that was told to us was true at all. So I think some people, they're like, oh, that's so cool and different and like fresh, and maybe that was even before that had been done a lot. But to me, that just leaves me like, well, so nothing mattered that we saw. Like, this was all just it was like just a big dream movie. So anyway, your mileage might vary with that one.
Dakota's trying to say something, but I have one more after he's done.
Okay, go ahead.
Red herrings. That is probably the classic example of this, right? It's technically not cheating because it is a vehicle tool of the genre, right? And red herrings are great. A great classic example is in A Study in Scarlet with Sherlock Holmes. It's the very first one where the big red herring is Rache, which is written on the wall. It leads the police and momentarily Sherlock off the main path, but we get roundabouted and we finally get back to the main course of the events. Red herrings are great. Christie uses them to great effect in And Then There Were None. There's like a lot of red herrings in And Then There Were None. And yeah, they're wonderful and great. But be careful about red herrings because you want to make sure that they can still you got to get your detective back on the right track because red herrings are meant to meander, not meant to completely derail.
Right. Thank you for that. And the Rache written on the floor, the German word for revenge, is sort of reinterpreted in the modern Sherlock show in a neat way, where they sort of poke a little bit of fun at that initial plot point, where they're like, why would she write the German word for revenge on the floor? No, she's clearly writing Rachel. It's her daughter's name. So I thought that was a nice homage to the original that still pays service to it, but isn't entirely throwing it out. Luke, did you have one more thing to share? Go ahead.
Yeah, so this is kind of like in a spy thriller when the main character is caught up in this web of deception and they don't really know what's going on until the end. That's a good way we can violate rules that have been set up. We did one. We read two Star Trek scripts, and one of them for Script Spotlight. One of them is called In the Pale Moonlight, and it's kind of complicated, but in it the captain is trying to get the Romulans to join a war, and he gets caught up in this web of deception. And we set up rules like, okay, we have the best data technician. He's going to design this perfect fake and all this kind of stuff. And it turns out the guy was shit at his job and the fake was obvious. And the whole thing was just the Machiavellian scheme to assassinate this Romulan senator and blame it on the enemy faction. And the captain like unwillingly participated in the scheme. It's really interesting.
You're saying the character himself gets kind of confused and doesn't really know, is not really able to follow it or piece it together, and the audience is kind of like on the same page as him.
Yeah, like there are rules that are set up, but they're lies being told to him by this
Okay.
like character like manipulating everything.
Sure. Okay, so yeah, your character has false information or bad information, or they themselves have been deceived, or their perception is in question somehow. Yeah, those are all great ways that you can lead the audience to the wrong conclusions. It's helpful that if your character then gets frustrated and is like, it doesn't make sense, the audience has someone that they can be like, oh, look, I'm not the only one. Kind of wish there was a character like this in Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy who could just be like, can somebody explain to me what's actually going on at this point? Like, I wish there was a really dumb guy in that story. I even when I wrote an ensemble western at one point, I put in a character with like a dementia, like an old guy, like the mayor who was going senile, who every couple scenes would just ask what's going on because he was like having trouble following. It made a really nice way to like have the characters continually recontextualize what's going on.
Uh, I think I've just got Star Trek on my brain, but there's an episode that like homages that. It's called Tinker, Tenor, Doctor, Spy.
Oh, okay. Well, hopefully they have a character that can explain what's going on. Tinker Tailor is to me one of the densest, most challenging mysteries to follow in terms of like modern
Oh yeah,
mystery movies. Like it does not hold your hand. In fact, it kind of shoves you away. Like it says you're trying the densest. Okay, let's name the densest, most complicated, difficult mysteries we've ever read or seen. Primer. If anyone has read or seen,
oh yeah,
or,
Primer.
yeah, seen Primer from 2004, sci-fi. Is it a mystery? I don't know. It's could be. It's a time travel movie. I guess a time travel thriller, kind of. And Tinker Tailor, which I haven't read the book, but the movie to me, maybe the book is clearer, or maybe the book is easier to follow. But like, I even read the George Smiley books when I was in high school, and I couldn't follow the movie. What else? Anyone else want to shout out a really what they thought was a kind of a complicated or dense or difficult to understand? Oh, Inherent Vice would be the other big one. But that one to me is like, it's hard to tell if we're even supposed to be following it or if that's part of the appeal. That like the character is so sort of stoned and confused that we kind of feel the same way. Anyone else?
Maybe like Dakota's listing a bunch. Maybe like A Scanner Darkly or Donnie Darko, if those count. Those are almost like deliberately opaque.
Right. Yeah. And feature character like Scanner Darkly has a lot of characters that are sort of stoners on LSD all the time and stuff like that. So it kind of feels like in the same world of Inherent Vice, like stoner mysteries, I guess you could say, where they don't really figure everything out. They don't really have every piece of it, and they themselves are kind of confused.
Twin Peaks.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, Lynchian mysteries usually don't even have a satisfying answer, really. Like, or it's so sort of abstract and open to interpretation. It's like kind of unclear if the writer director even knows the answer, or if like there's multiple answers, or we were asking the wrong question the whole time, or something. A lot of people like them. I'm not as big of a Lynch fan as others are, but some people really are super fans. Okay, so some more unwritten rules. Maybe the detective will process or explain a clue's significance as they find it, or maybe they will keep it to themselves. But before too long, we should know what it means. Like it might kind of occasionally work to have your character find something, then we don't learn the significance of it till the end of the book. But I wouldn't do more than just one or two of those. Like for most clues, they only really count as clues if the audience knows what it means. So although we don't have to see the full picture of what it means, we don't need to know everything that it means, but we at least need to know what the detective gleaned from this clue. With a mystery solver that's too internal or quiet, we might lose the opportunity also to be entertained and impressed by their methods, which is just a key hook to many of these characters and books. So if your story is motivated by a driving question, we want to be able to assess your character's progress in learning the answer. But if we can't see into their head at all, then we may not know how close they are to figuring it out. Could be an issue. There might be consistency in rules and devices related to your character's, or there should be, I should say, consistency in rules and devices related to your character's perception. So if your character recounts their version of a crime and we see it play out, we're creating, in a movie, for instance, the precedent that the camera can lie. Books work a little differently because we don't have a camera or an objective point of perception. But we would still understand, okay, your character, they don't have a memory problem, so they should be able to remember things that a reasonable person can remember. There shouldn't be any gaps missing from their perception that are unaccounted for. And although in real life sometimes people do just forget stuff, typically you don't want book characters to do that because it feels like cheating, even if it might be realistic. There are certain stuff you can get away with in true stories that you can't get away with in fiction. Does that make sense?
Definitely.
Mhm. Yep.
You guys give another example maybe of like characters. Like my first example is your characters just forget. In a book, we'd almost always be pissed off by that unless it was in a true crime book or something like that, where it's like, well, the detective just forgot and needed to go check his notes again or something like that, right? What's another thing that you wouldn't really want to put in a story, but that might happen in real life?
I mean, I've seen this in one real story, but it's so tough to get done that it's doing two unreliable narrators fighting for who killed the person. And so the mystery is never really resolved because you have to decide who you trust in the end because it's
Sure.
two different points of view and both have reasons to say this person killed this person because of this or this person killed this person because of that, and none of them accept the guilt.
Yeah, that is realistic. And real life is often like that. It's like, that's that person's account. That's that person's account. We're never really going to know. It's usually unsatisfying in a story, which is why so many stories end with a big confession and an arrest and the bad guy gets taken away. Anything else you guys can think of?
Yeah, there's this common thing that happens in real life where people give confessions to crimes they didn't commit because they're pressured by the police. This does not really work in stories.
Right.
And it's one of those things people find hard to suspend their disbelief, even though it happens constantly.
Yeah, this is kind of just the person wants to be left alone at this point, and they've been badgered, or maybe in some cases kind of convinced maybe you did do it. But for one reason or another, they confess to something they did not do. If you're
Oh,
writing a really
there
close
was a case about that.
Okay, go ahead.
There,
Okay.
there was a case a little bit ago that in the US got like the guys that were in prison got free. I don't remember the name of the case,
Okay, all good. You can drop a link if you can find it.
but they were imprisoned when they were teens.
Okay, thank you for that. So yeah, this is something comes up in real life all the time. Might be sort of weird in a story. Dakota and I was going to call you Detective. Detective and Luke were saying enemy is another one that is deliberately. Oh, never mind. Sorry. When the detective destroys evidence or a character does nothing. Yeah, absolutely. Or a character just there's a great part in the movie Michael Clayton where the main character is a like a high profile fixer for a corporation. He's like this really intense, busy, driven guy. He's always on the case and always trying to solve the next problem. And in the opening sequence, I think he sees some horses by the side of the road and he just gets out and just looks at the horses. Like most of the time, it can be hard to justify your characters just doing the random weird little stuff that people do in real life. But sometimes it can be a great plot point because then his car blows up and he survives because he just got out to look at the horses, right? So there are certain things that characters might it can work. There are ways you can make these things work in stories, is what I mean to say. But there's a lot of stuff that normally it might be realistic, but it does not lead to a better book. Okay, setup and payoff. So we're talking about foreshadowing. You plant a line of dialogue, an action, or some excuse me, not plot, earlier in the story and reveal its true significance later, or later something happens with it. We warn the reader about what is going to happen before it actually unfolds. especially if it's just really subtle clues. We might have your characters themselves, like the narrator, might be able to foreshadow things if they're speaking retrospectively. Little did I know, but blank and blank would happen next. So they can sort of tease you with what's going to happen in the story. Or this could be just the events of the story happen to foreshadow something. And it might be a sort of symbolic foreshadowing, or it could be actual literal external plot events. Can somebody give an example of symbolic foreshadowing?
Oh, probably I can give a ton. Let me think about it.
Either one you've seen
Um,
before or just something off the top of your head. Go ahead.
Fargo, season 2, episode 7 intro has a shovel digging in dirt. What, that's some symbolic foreshadowing. What else? Let me think of a book one. Hitchhiker's Guide. Arthur Dent wakes up and he finds out that his house has been scheduled for demolition without his consent. He's very upset about it, and this symbolically foreshadows that the Earth has been scheduled for demolition without humanity's consent.
Right. Yeah, that's a great connection. Anyone else? Okay, let's hear an example of plot event foreshadowing then. If that's symbolic, what would be the more concrete version of this be?
For a setup,
Yeah, for foreshadowing, which is
foreshadowing.
yeah, sure. Hinting that something's going to happen later.
Okay, I mean, not even hinting, just we open the story on a character's grave.
Sure.
So we know by the end of the story that character is probably going to end up in that grave.
Yeah, absolutely. Which you could subvert. By the end, maybe the one approaching their grave is in fact them, and they didn't really die; they faked their death. But so you are creating a certain expectation with the foreshadowing. You can always be paying it off in a different way than we expect. Like that is part of the whole Oreo pizza idea that I often talk about. The literary Oreo pizza is you make a promise to the reader, then you deliver on that promise, but with something better than they thought they were going to get. So symbolic foreshadowing might just kind of use metaphor, simile, or illusion to suggest that something is going to happen later, whereas concrete plot foreshadowing might be, well, there's going to be a big storm coming up because we can see storm clouds and they're moving closer and they're getting closer. We hear thunder grumbling on the horizon. The Brigands of Rattleborch is this amazing script that uses this huge rainstorm as the central plot point, and it really, really takes its time building up. Like we see the sky beginning to darken, and then a few scenes later, we see the wind starting to pick up. Then a few scenes later, the first drops begin to fall. And we get the sense something momentous is going to happen here, more than just a storm. It's more than just a regular rain, right? There's something terrible is coming. And oh boy, is it. If you've not read that one and you have a strong stomach, I often recommend it. Okay, so setup and payoff. We are often trying to pay off setups in a different way than the reader expects. It's fine for them to build up an expectation of what's going to happen, and then usually we want to pull the rug and say it happens differently. Because one of the main things that can lead to boredom in a story is every scene is playing out like I think it will, even if what's happening is exciting. That can be a trap that a lot of writers fall into. There's an action, every scene is an action scene. How could you possibly be bored? Well, because all the action scenes are playing out in a way that I've seen before, in a way that is predictable, in a way that feels rote, that feels rehearsed. It doesn't feel spontaneous or new or fresh or different. I'm not being surprised. So payoff is often going to be about subverting some of those expectations of the setup. The break into three hinges on the protagonist remembering or finding something, or usually having this kind of breakthrough or this moment where they realize what they have to do. A lot of the time, that's going to be linking back to paying off a setup from something the hero did earlier in the story. So, especially if you want to show that our character has definitively changed, usually in the first act, you want to show them making the wrong choice or failing to do something. And then by the break, like around the break into three, that becomes a nice moment to show, oh no, they've learned to do that now. A good example would be something like, how about the Jump Street movie, 21 Jump Streets? really clear, effective, great setups and payoffs in this movie. But, and I know we're talking novels, so ideally, if somebody has a novel example you want to shout out, you can. But this is a movie about the jock and the nerd, essentially. They end up both becoming cops after school ends, and they end up infiltrating a school together. Now they have to sort of re-enter, like they have to pretend to be high schoolers in order to catch a bad guy and stop him. The break into three of the story is the characters combining their skills and working together. So early on throughout the first act, there's lots and lots of setups where we just see the characters failing to work together, or they can't possibly see eye to eye with the other person. The nerd is like, football, that's dumb. And the jock is like, chemistry, I think that's dumb. So we see all these incompatibilities between them. Then at the break into three, we realize only with their skills combined are they going to be able to defeat the bad guy. So guess what? The chemistry nerd makes a concoction, and then the jock, he throws it like a football. And we combine their skills together, chemistry and sports. We sort of like use them both in one. And only with the earlier setup would that payoff make sense. Only by showing the characters failing to combine their skill sets or to recognize the strengths of the other, can they then pay that off in a way that feels like you're breaking through a barricade and it feels really propulsive and satisfying. So Breaking into Three is really, really, really tied to the idea of effective and satisfying payoffs. And then the finale is kind of like your another place where you're paying off almost everything else in the story. The epilogue is where you're going to be paying off the last couple questions and potentially leaving a few things unresolved. So try to disguise earlier setups to make the audience think that it's there for a different purpose. That's kind of linked to this idea of misdirection. Misdirection, I have a slide on that. Don't I? I guess this is the slide on. These are different types of misdirection, yeah. Okay, so in misdirection, you are making a moment seem like it was fulfilling one purpose, but in fact, it was doing something else. I think the example that's just easy to point to because a lot of people know it would be, did I have a, oh, I thought I had an extra slide there too. That must be in the feature class. Sixth Sense is like one of those easy examples. Everybody knows the twist, right? We see the main character get shot in the opening scene of the movie, and then we flash forward to later, and it's like 1 year later. He's alive again, or he's fine. He seems to be okay. So we sort of, the audience will sort of assume in that moment, oh, I guess that was like a formative moment for him to show why he is emotionally in the place where he is now. He was shot by a former student of his, so I think that scene was there to set up the fact that he has this sort of ache unresolved, that he's going to be trying to help another kid like that. And that's true. It is there for those reasons. But it seems like that's all that it's there for. When in fact, the reality is, everybody knows this twist by now, right? What's the twist?
He's dead.
He's dead. It has been the whole movie after him being shot, because he dies pretty much on the spot after getting shot there on the bed. And it's fair play, because the writer did not lie to us. It just combined two sort of setups together in such a way that it seemed to indicate that this earlier moment was there for a different purpose. Which is why it's so vital that he be shot by one of his prior students. And like, that's why it's so vital that it set up the emotional arc of the movie. Obviously, now that has been done, viewers are more savvy to that kind of thing, but you see how effectively it does work. So try to disguise your setups by making it seem like it is there for a different reason. Anybody else have any examples they've seen of effective misdirection?
Yeah, and Clue, the movie Clue. There's great misdirection in everybody thinks that it was, Miss Scarlet or Miss Peacock or one of the other people, right? But there's three different endings. So the misdirection is, well, this is more for a comedic effect, but it's all of these people, or it's this person or that person. And it's whoever has the gun. No, it's whoever has this, it's whoever has that. So it's whoever has the thing that whatever the movie decides that it needs to be. So it's the misdirection is through how Tim Curry's character explains everything at the end. And he either he explains it really quickly or it doesn't happen. So it depends on which ending you go with. So
Right.
that's a unconventional example, but it can be done.
Yeah, Clue is really just making fun of parlor mystery style tropes. So it's packed full of misdirection
Okay.
that just doesn't have a canonical answer because there's three different potential solutions.
Yep.
So by just shotgunning a bunch of clues at the reader, you can sort of create this blank space where there's multiple possible explanations, which might work in certain circumstances.
Arrival, we open on a mother talking about her daughter's death. That's kind of misdirection, foreshadowing. I don't know what you'd call it. Um, Spoilers for Arrival. By learning this alien language, the protagonist uh, learns how to experience time non-linearly, and so she's seeing things before they've happened, talking about them in the beginning of the movie before her daughter was even born. So we think like her daughter was born a long time ago and died, and it was a tragedy, but she actually chooses to have her daughter, even knowing that she's going to die because she's going, I don't know, it's a whole thing.
Right. Yeah,
Good
I would say
movie.
that's
Good story.
foreshadowing. The book is even written, I think, in or at least large portions of it are in future kind of second person, like you will do this, you will do that. So the book kind of pulls it off in a slightly different way, manipulates the POV differently. I haven't actually read the book though. I just know that about it, the devices it uses, but I have seen the movie.
It's a short story, actually. It's called The Story of Your Life.
That's right. So different types of misdirection might be, we've mentioned red herrings, which are clues that lead the wrong direction, but still push your character to doing something interesting. So it shouldn't take them so far off course that they're no longer involved in the story anymore at all. It bounces them like a pinball bumper in the right general direction, and they might end up coming across the next clue in sort of an unconventional way, because they are coming at it from being off the right track. Foreshadowing is just fake foreshadowing, or it seems like we're foreshadowing something, but then it turns out that something else is going on. The untwist is an outcome or an answer to a mystery considered to be too obvious. That turns out to actually be exactly what is going on, which some viewers get really annoyed by that. So you do have to be careful with that. But that because that makes it just seem like your detectives are dumb, or that the solution was it should have been resolved much easier. So there's effective ways to use all of these, but think of the stage magician where he has the scarf in one hand, where meanwhile in the other hand he's sort of moving the coin, and therefore we never see where the coin goes. All right, so I think just we have a couple slides left, but instead of doing every single one in the exercise, I think we will go right to questions, then open lab to see how much of that we have to work on today. And then we have lab later today from 4 to 6 p.m. Pacific time for your questions, topics, and pages. So let's stop right now and ask for any questions on the topic we covered today, which is suspense and tension.
Oh, go ahead, Dakota.
No, go ahead. I was actually gonna think on it for a second. Go
Could you
ahead.
get back to the slide about tension? Like, did you list different sort of ways to build tension, like the bomb under the table, that kind of thing?
Yeah, a bunch of slides on it. Where's the one where I think this is the one?
Okay.
Or was there a different slide?
Um, I'm just wondering if you had like a bullet point list of just like methods writers use to build tension or suspense or whatever. Because the only one that I can think of right now is the bomb under the table sort of analogy.
Well, I guess the entire slideshow is sort of answering that question more broadly. I'm not sure if I have a slide that kind of just has a really easy checklist.
Okay.
I guess now that you mentioned it, that would be a good idea to include a slide like that, so I can add that for the next time. But let's cover it. So the question was just what are techniques for creating suspense? Is that right?
Yeah. I mean, you talked about like a horror movie sort of characters opening cupboards and this kind of thing, looking in the mirror is a big one. Is there a name for that technique? Playing with people's like expectations, like
Oh,
I've seen horror genre stuff.
um, those I guess you would just call it subverting genre expectations. I'm not sure if there's
Okay.
a specific
No,
word for
that makes sense. And you did cover that.
Right.
And then there's the bomb under the table. There's oh God, building suspense. Yeah, I'm drawing a blank right now.
Well, suspense comes from anticipation. That could come from your character is really anticipating, waiting for something to happen, or that could be we, the observers, the audience, are waiting for something to happen. So it can result from dramatic irony. That's another tool that you can use
Right.
here, where the audience knows something that the character does not. And as a result of that, usually that thing will be a source of tension or danger, or, well, I shouldn't say tension is that we're defining that, but it'll be a source of danger or a problem for your characters in some kind of way, something that would demand their attention. And yet they don't know that the killer's in the closet, or that I guess this is the bomb example you were
about
talking about. Go ahead.
what about tension that comes from knowing a thing that the characters know? Like I'm fascinated by this one scene in Better Call Saul. It's just like this little tiny meeting room, and there's a table. It's an empty table, and then somebody comes in and sits down and starts like opening their paperwork, and then another person, and then another person. But we know what's happening. Like we know what these characters know, and that makes it super tense because this is about to be like a battle, like a legal battle, but still like a very high stakes kind of confrontation is about to happen.
Oh, sure.
What is what is that called? Like,
I don't know if it has a name, but that sounds like it's deriving tension from the audience anticipating this confrontation that's coming. And
anticipation. Okay.
yeah, and your characters are preparing for this big battle. It's kind of like you watch the characters lock and load before they go do the SWAT team raid. Can kind of build a
Yeah.
certain anticipation in the reader, even though we know what's going to happen, because we are sort of being forced to linger in these moments in the lead up to it, I guess. Lingering in the lead up, maybe we'll call
Oh,
it that.
let's call it the calm before the storm.
Yeah, that's good. So that would be uh it's kind of putting the reader in the shoes of the person about to experience the anticipated action, right? So we have to, it's the day before your execution, and even just brushing your teeth is just filled with this sense of dread. Or, just tying your shoes, it's the last time you'll ever tie those shoes. That a sense of heaviness to the actions because you know that something that you've been anticipating is right about to happen next.
Okay.
So maybe we'll call that a technique as well. Lingering in the calm before the storm.
Like
What
that
else?
one.
Anything else come to you guys' mind? Things we've covered today, or stuff that we haven't covered?
So
Go ahead.
this is
Go ahead.
mostly just a question on like weaknesses of thrillers and suspense, but what is kind of what would you say are like the things to kind of not, like, I don't want to say don't do this, but like things that are kind of more overdone than not, um like tropey kind of things to not necessarily avoid, but just to kind of keep in mind.
Sure.
Because we've seen a lot. We've all seen, a dead body on page one. Even I'm doing dead body on page one. So, so how do we kind of invigorate that kind of, if we are doing a trope, it's kind of hard to subvert it if we've seen everything because this is a very old genre. So, what would be a good way to kind of subvert tropes, especially if they've been around forever?
Sure.
Um,
So
yeah.
the audience likes tropes, and so we shouldn't avoid them entirely. And like opening with a corpse on page one of the mystery book is so codified into the genre that no fan would be upset at. No, none of them would view it as a cliche. There are cliched turns of phrase and cliched ways, like imagine the we have the butler with a knife in his back in front of the grand staircase or whatever. It might be like an image that we have seen before or something like that. But at the end of the day, it's okay to use tropes. I would say almost always the answer will be voice. And the way that you write it, the way that you describe it, like your particular view on it, the things that you observe or notice or bring out of that situation. I'm going to give you an example. I forget the name of the book though. That's the thing. So you might have to look it up after. But this is a Lemony Snicket book, not Unfortunate Events, but one of his other ones. I think he was writing it under his real name. But in any case, it starts out with a dead body, page 1, right? It starts out, a composer has been murdered. But the composer was not composing at the moment. In fact, he was, you could say, decomposing. And so we start with kind of a joke, right? So you can bring like your own point of view to what's going on. You can like add a sense of humor. You can add a different perspective. Like maybe you're writing that scene about the, finding the corpse from the perspective of the dog of the main character, or a small child, or somebody that has an unusual take on things. Maybe you are writing about a character who stumbles upon the crime scene and they're a poet. So the way they describe it in their own head is like in haiku form or something. I don't know, I'm just listing stuff, right? So I would try to find a different way of describing the situation, even if it feels like we've seen the scene before, even if it feels like even the dialogue itself might be kind of cliche to write it out. Maybe you don't need to write out all the dialogue. Maybe you can summarize more of it, and maybe you can find a different sort of like novelistic approach to what's going on. So find a different angle of approach, I guess I would say. Does that answer that question? Anything else you want to ask or dive into on that?
Yeah, so like I actually agree with you. I love all the tropes. It's super fun. I think that when it comes to that though, especially when it comes to voice, like I think one of the hardest things to do is uh really, especially with the explanation part. So like there's always a scene where the detective explains stuff. Like this is how the murder happened. Blah blah blah. If you do that, right? Um because you are with the detective, you would know how the murder happened. So do we kind of need that scene anymore?
Well,
Like,
it depends who your POV is, because
right.
we were talking earlier about Watson, right? And Watson is not really solving the whole case. He has like a lot of it, but he doesn't have like the last 10 to 20%. So I think that's why in those stories you have the detective that at the end fully explains all the pieces that we were missing. But you're sort of saying if the detective is gathering clues and making conclusions in a close POV throughout the book, do we need to have them explain everything at the end? I would say no. You're right. We probably don't. You can sort of gloss over that part or say, then he went and made his police report, and we just kind of skip past it. We don't need to recap something that the audience already knows. I would say it could be dramatic to tell people about it though. So there might be something else that we're doing besides just like I would say if you do that scene, make sure that you're doing something with it besides just recounting information. So, whoever we tell the information to might have a significant reaction that leads to drama. Maybe they're like, I'm not the killer, that's the killer. Maybe they give us a new clue or something we didn't know before. I think it's fine to have your detective explain what happened in a crime because in real life detectives do that. They just, law enforcement needs to be able to explain what happened. That's a big part of their job. But if it's not dramatic and it's not fresh, then no, we don't need it.
Thank you.
Sure. Thank you for the question. Not just saying tips for writing better narrative tension in a scene and tips for sentence level tension. This is maybe diving a little too deep into past my grasp of microtension a little bit. I think just given the PDF that you sent me, you probably have a stronger grasp of this than I do. Do you want to go into this topic, Nacho, if you're able to speak up?
Oh no, no, that was just a follow-up to what Luke mentioned earlier, just about, I guess, like in general, maybe even just talking about just narrative tension, like as a technique in your descriptions and stuff.
Okay.
Which I mean, obviously it has to do with plotting because you have to have like a reason why something's, around the corner, right? But like,
Yeah.
I guess there is some level where it's sort of like the way you're describing things, you're kind of building tension in that just in your descriptions, I guess.
I would say the way that I would manage and think of that is usually that you're building to a point. But it doesn't have to be, and you don't have to immediately start with your point. And that might lead you to write descriptions that take their time. They are we're not rushing through to the end of the scene, but you might even in some cases be able to ask little questions to yourself, then answer them in order to bridge us from one moment to the next. Like, it wasn't a normal house. In fact, it looked normal from the front. The door was the normal size. The windows all looked normal. Like, you can start like that. You can sort of create that sense of something unresolved or something unknown in your own description. Or you can, so that's just like a way of creating almost like that contradictory level tension where it seems like something's wrong or something's off, or it doesn't initially say what the point is or what it's building to, but it sort of promises that it will be.
And
Go ahead.
how about sort of like unusual choices in dialogue? A character says something that just sort of like raises a little question about the scene.
I think that works well when you are showing that their dialogue clearly contrasts to what they're thinking and feeling. So that is going to be your character describes, it was like the most disturbing or what's the example I'm leading to here? It was the worst day of my entire life. It seemed like it was raining, it was miserable and muddy outside. And then I came into class and I gave the students a big good morning, everybody. Like, whatever it is, right? We can see that they are miserable, but they're acting happy, or they can see that they're happy, but they're acting miserable. Or maybe it seems that there is something they're not telling us, or maybe they start with some really weird point of view or assertion that they then promise they will kind of back up as they go on. Or I wrote this one movie called The Tube where I did this technique where the main character, she has the voiceover narration for the movie. She is the narrator, but her voiceover has an English accent, or her voiceover has an American accent. But when she speaks aloud, she has an English accent. Why is that? And I just wait a while before explaining why. So that might just raise the question of the reader: wait, is that the same person talking out? Wait, that's her, right? Like,
Yes.
why would you have a different accent? That doesn't make any sense, right?
Or a character asks them a question in the scene and their response we know is a lie, right?
Sure.
It's like, what's that in your hand? Oh, it's not a knife. It's nothing,
Sure. Yeah, that works. Or a character has a really unexpected reaction to something, like they or really unexpected feeling as a result of something happening, like something's triggering for them, or something raises memory, like stirs up memories in them that maybe they are not going to explain to us right away, but we just see how it impacts them. Those are all some good techniques.
Well, how about
Go ahead.
sort of just an issue you might see sometimes in like beginning writing where like a character just kind of rushes a little bit too much. I mean, a writer rushes too much in losing a really good opportunity to build tension, like to tease out the suspense of a moment. I don't know if you've
Right.
seen that sometimes, but
I'm sure I have. Yeah, it's uh like more of a first draft problem. And if you are finding that your what are supposed to be the best scenes are just kind of not feeling that impactful, it could be that it needs more buildup, more of all the techniques we talked about today, more foreshadowing, more of the anticipation. We need to make sure that we're really hoping for one thing and really dreading some other outcome. We're invested in your characters' journeys. We understand what they're trying to do and why. We know what the obstacle is and what their progress is in accomplishing or overcoming that obstacle. So I think, yeah, we want to make sure everything's really working together. Good.
also it's sort of like an issue sometimes in action scenes, right? Where someone's writing an action scene, but it's like it doesn't we don't feel worried that the character is going to be hurt or something just because of the way that it's described. Like you could take, I mean, obviously you can go overboard and just it's like way too much detail, but like sometimes it feels like maybe beginning writers kind of rush a little bit too much in the scenes where they should slow down, and then they speed up over or they slow down too much in the other scenes where we start to feel like, oh, is there something exciting about to happen? But it's actually like there's nothing going on.
Sure. Yeah, you don't want to, I guess I would say you don't want to make too many assumptions that your reader will be able to figure out what the characters are feeling in a novel. We need to be like reminded of or consistently updated with what your characters are thinking and feeling, especially in YA and middle grade. You can be a little more
Mhm.
opaque with adult, but agents and publishers in YA especially often say, can you update us on what this character is feeling, how they're reacting to this next thing, what their current assumption is of what's going on, what is their theory as to what's going on, what are they planning to do next? Like it may be a result of not enough interiority, and you're not really feeling the fear of death if we're just watching the character mechanically beat up bad guys. That might be the intended effect. Maybe your character beats up bad guys every day and they're not afraid, but it might be less immersive, and it could lead to, if unless the character is that sort of superhero, then it might not really feel like it's really happening or really has that sense of danger that you want to. So make sure you're building in the appropriate interiority for your characters and keeping us up to date on their feelings and all of that kind of emotional stuff that is going to lead to greater hope and greater dread. Always looking for that intersection of hope and dread. All right, thank you for the question there. And as I continue to evolve my knowledge of microtension, which is, as I mentioned, a pretty new idea to me, I will add more and more slides on it. Okay, so keep hitting your word count goals, keep reading, and of course, everyone come to our Spooktacular on October 26th, Boyle Heights Arts Collective, downtown Los Angeles. We are going to be writing a whole feature outline for a horror movie from 12 to 6 p.m. all that day. So there's parking nearby. You can come join us. We will do a little bit of instruction and like maybe even partner. If you're looking for a collaborator, I will have like a segment at the beginning, like raise your hand if you're looking for a writing partner. So you don't have to write alone. But come join us and you'll have a full set of at least story beats by the end of the day. If you're feeling brave, you can have scene cards too. But I would say aim for story beats. Okay. Any last questions, thoughts, or comments before we wrap up?
Just asking everyone to sign up for our, if you're planning to write a feature or pilot, so we know how many, we need a certain minimum number of people to do these. So be sure to sign up.
Thank you for that. Upcoming topics are action horror and features. That's Sunday 11 to 1. And post-apocalyptic dystopian Friday 6 to 8. That's the TV pilot theme. We just did our first class in that yesterday, and that's on YouTube if you want to check that out. And Mystery Crime, 1 p.m. Eastern Time on WordCamp. Thank you for that. 1 p.m. Eastern Time. On what? You mean today?
It's tomorrow.
Oh, tomorrow. Got it.
It's tomorrow. 1 p.m. Eastern tomorrow, right here on WordCamp.
Okay. Sunday. Thank you. All right. Thanks, guys. We'll be wrapping up now. Keep hitting those word count goals. Keep your momentum and energy high. And we'll look forward to seeing you either in lab or in the Sunday class tomorrow, 11 to 1. All right. Thanks, guys. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.